Today's guest is Cubert from the Abandoned Cubicle, and we're going to talk about his journey to financial independence and his plan to retire early with his wife and young children. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. While you're there, you can sign up for a monthly email where I share the best articles I read this month, let you know about upcoming episodes, and share a little wisdom. You can also listen to coaching calls under the Coaching Calls tab. I also share the most interesting articles I read every week on Facebook at facebook.com/Richer Soul. And there's also a Facebook group where you can ask questions and interact with other listeners. I just checked the stats, and we have listeners in all 50 states and the District of Columbia, along with 45 other countries. I want to hear from you. You all have unique and individual issues based on where you live. Say hi. Let me know how you're doing and if something from the show has helped you move forward. The email is rocky@richersoul.com. I read them all. I've recently been doing a lot of short coaching sessions on specific issues with some new clients. Too often, we're so close we can't see the forest through the tree blocking our path. Or other times, it's the first time down a path and we don't know which fork to choose. Maybe it's our first child, or a first house, or a career change. Having insights of someone who is 20 years ahead of you on the path and can see all the choices and the resulting outcomes can help you avoid so many mistakes. Avoiding mistakes is big. The mental effects of a bad decision can hold so many of us back in fear. In addition, having clarity and intention going into a situation can provide the confidence to move forward with conviction. What big decisions keep you up at night? What's causing you to worry, or struggles that you wish you could handle once and for all? Just writing it down and looking at the choices is a great first step. And I'd be happy to read what you wrote. Email it to me. I haven't answered listeners' questions on the show, and we should start doing that. Just remember, I don't tell people my agenda because it's your life and it should be your path. I help people explore options and then let them decide what's best for them and remove as much risk as possible from the choice. I can help you get unstuck and take action. You can schedule a time to chat to see if I can help you with your specific decision. And if I can't, I can probably recommend a resource to help you. Today's focus is health. I look back as I've lost 50 pounds and have gone from out of shape to the best shape in my life. That old life seems so far away, but it's a journey that began almost 6 years ago. When I lost the weight, people would ask if I was okay. They were worried I might have cancer or some other illness. Then they would ask how I did it. They wanted a magic bullet, and unfortunately, I said 2 dirty words: diet and exercise. And that was the end of the conversation, 99% of the time. Funny how that 1% number comes back around. We all have a diet. Some of us are on the seafood diet. We see food and we eat it. It's a choice. And regardless of what you think, you've made one. Our bodies are made to move. The more they move, the better they become. That's reality. Some movements are a lot better than other movements. I found this out the hard way, wasting my time with the movements and exercises that got me nowhere. It's not much different than financial advice space, where the only person getting rich is the guy selling you investments. The book that really changed my thinking was The 4-Hour Body by Tim Ferriss. It was about doing the most useful exercises and eating the appropriate foods at the right time. Even eating more food than before and still losing weight. One key was MED, minimum effective dose of exercise. Do less, gain more. Here's the rub. That was just step one, and what gets you to step one won't get you to the second step. Along the way, I have a team of people who have coached me on my food, my exercise routine, and people who kept me accountable. I use a simple app now at the gym, 5x5 Strong Lifts. It tells me what to do, in what order, and when to do it, and when to rest, and how much weights, down to the plates I need to use. It even has videos to show you the proper form. 3 to 4 exercises 3 times a week is a major step forward, and the app removes all the thinking. You just do it. The core is the squat, deadlift, and bench. Get those 3 down and do them 3 times a week, and you're well on your way. It puts you in the 1%. If you have injuries or are just starting out, you can do them at home with air squats, push-ups, and lifting some light weights for the deadlift. I know I was never the guy to lift free weights. I'm not Mr. I lift them up, I put them down. And being on that side of the gym is scary. But over time, I found comfort. Most of the people at the gym are busy in their own mind, and they're not looking at you. And if they are, more often than not, it's, wow, look at them. They're here trying. Which of course puts you so far ahead of everyone else. One of the reasons my 16-year-old son respects me is because he knows I can squat, deadlift, and bench his body weight and a lot more. While he can outrun me, he still can't outlift me. And for boys, being able to do that, to outdo dad, is a major motivator. Do your kids look up to you? Speaking of money, kids, and spending, a new study showed that the best way to prevent people from frivolous spending was to show them a picture of their kids before they made a bad purchasing decision. Pain keeps us from living the life we choose, and being strong and moving is a way to keep the pain at bay. I'm not a doctor, and so don't expect medical advice from me. In addition, we are all unique, and what works for me may not work for you. I will say, all my aches and pains are now gone. One therapy that helped me along the way is called ART, Active Release Technique. I've used this both for pain of muscles and also to increase my range of motion with my muscles. The therapy is designed to manipulate your soft tissue through a combination of movements and manipulation to break up scar tissue that restricts motion and causes pain. It usually takes 1 to 3 sessions for most issues, and some will take longer. I know I've recommended this for a lot of people who spent years struggling with an issue that held them back. It was also great for the soccer team when the kids got injured. One positive is that if you're not getting relief in a few sessions, you know it's not going to work and it's time to move on and try something else. When it comes to taking advice, make sure you take advice from people who have the experience and have walked the path and have real knowledge in the situation. Today's guest is Cubert, which is not his real name, and he's on a path to financial independence. He's almost there. Cubert is an early retirement seeker who blogs over at abandonedcubicle.com. He and his wife, Miss Cubert, and a boy and girl age 5 reside in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Cubert plans to retire early in 2019 at the ripe young age of 46 to spend more time with his family and on projects he has a passion for, such as real estate property management, personal finance blogging, and life coaching. Traveling, cycling, and minimalist living are passions for this aspiring retiree. Let's meet him. Welcome to Richer Soul, Cubert. It's great to have you join us today.
Thank you. Wonderful to be here.
Normally I have a first question that's pretty standard, but today we're going to deviate. Is Cubert your real name?
It is not. And certainly, Rocky, I can give a little bit of a background on that.
Sure.
First of all, the blog is abandoned cubicle. So Cubert has a little bit of that sort of resonance to the name of the blog. But also, I am a child of the late 70s and 80s and the advent of coin-op video games. So one of the popular ones that was a favorite of mine growing up was Cubert, albeit that was spelled with the letter Q, B-E-R-T. So just a little tongue-in-cheek there, and certainly like to keep things a little bit anonymous on my blog right now since I'm still gainfully employed.
I totally understand. So let's go back to the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Growing up, I think I was shaped through circumstance. I think most all of us are, obviously, but in my situation, child of divorce, my folks split up when I was 7, and it was tough because there were discussions about child support and things like that. We didn't have a lot of money to play with back in those days. My parents, both hardworking, but definitely in the blue-collar middle class spectrum. And I learned definitely at an early age that money doesn't grow on trees. And it wasn't unheard of for me to have hand-me-down clothes from my cousins up until probably junior high, which I have no qualms about. And at the time, it just felt like it was kind of a normal thing. We by no means had a poverty-like existence, don't get me wrong. But certainly, money was a topic, and there was always sort of a watchful eye on how we spent our money. There wasn't a lot of big travel vacations. I never got on a plane growing up to travel anywhere. It was always a road trip. But all in all, a pretty normal childhood, Rocky, I would have to say, where money is concerned. But yeah, definitely there was some of that struggle, knowing that money had to come from somewhere, and sometimes a job itself didn't provide necessarily enough where me and my sister, 2 years older, were concerned.
So are you going to do something different? Because your kids are probably growing up in a different type of upbringing. What are you doing differently with them to teach them about money?
Well, that's a great question. They're 5. We have twins. And it's starting. You're never quite too young, I think, when you can start communicating with your children. I think there's going to be the piggy bank and collecting coins and things like that. Grandparents love to share their quarters, nickels, and dimes, and so do parents. But they're definitely in a different situation than I was. But that said, we live probably as modestly, my wife and I in our household do, despite perhaps having a larger income than my parents did when I was growing up. The house is probably even smaller by square footage. We live in a 1,500 finished square foot house. The kids share a bedroom, and we're not in a ritzy neighborhood. The kids go to public school. So, if anything, we're teaching them, I think, by example, that you can be happy, you can enjoy life by simply keeping busy, getting outside, enjoying playing catch, going for bike rides, reading books from the library. We do not buy kids' books. We come home with a stack of 25 books every 3 weeks, because that's how much the library lets us check out at a time. And it works great, Rocky. I think I'm a student of life as much as I am a student of finance and money. I think one without the other is sort of incomplete. So yeah, I think it's a little early to tell at 5 where we're heading with their money at home curriculum. I can tell you that they're going to certainly, I hope, pick up a lot of cues from mom and dad. We're not taking them shopping every weekend at the mall. In fact, the only times they really go to the mall is when our parents are in town and they want to take them to the rides at the Mall of America, or simply just something to do on a winter day, just to go walk around, people watch. So that's sort of the exposure that they have today.
And I've always said your kids don't listen to what you say, they listen to what you do. And so by leading that life and showing them in your actions, it makes it clear. And you've been intentional in your choices to live on less than you could. And that has helped you to build your investment portfolio, I'm sure. And I guess I'm going to ask the question of what got you into this whole financial independence, retire early movement?
So it goes back to 2014. It was about a year and a half into a very, very difficult project at work. It was draining, honestly, and it was rewarding at the same time. So here's the irony of it, Rock. It was sort of the project that established me and my company as a very reliable person that could work hard to get the job done, deliver what needed to be delivered. And it led to good raises, good bonuses, and a few cracks at promotion that I actually turned down for reasons I can share with you as well. But in that fall of 2014, I stumbled across Mr. Money Mustache. And I think at that point, I was just looking for, hey, my goodness, is there an escape hatch here? I don't want to be doing this for the next 25 years. And that's where I found his site. And it was, the revelation was in the math. There's a few posts, there's many posts, and I read them all, that explain how, based on how much you save of your take-home pay, can dictate how quickly you can step away from an at-will job. So that's how it began for me. And I'm still on that journey here 4+ years later.
So why did you turn down the promotions?
Yes, thank you. I did bring that up. It had to do with the kids. It was nothing more than the fact that the previous year and a half had been such a beatdown. No one was coming after me personally at work, but it was just a very tough project with weekend work, evening work, work on holidays. It was burnout. Best way to describe it is burnout. So here I am. That was also a year after our twins were born, and I'm thinking, my gosh, I don't want to see their childhood go by in the blink of an eye. And I figured if I took the promotion that it would involve travel, it would involve continued weekends, and just a lot more pressure when I really wanted to be there for my family. So difficult, but no regrets about both of those opportunities, which came up in 2015, actually. It just wasn't the right time. And I still have no regrets about it to this day.
And I think that's a point that a lot of people struggle with, in the sense that they look at the money, they think it'll work out, and they don't realize how out of balance their life is going to be and how much they're going to give up or lose in their relationships with their kids and their wife, and how much they're going to miss. And I think it takes the forethought to say, you know what, this is what the outcome's going to be, and then just having the courage to say no. Not a lot of people do. So congratulations.
Thank you. I probably need to hear more of that sometimes when I see peers that have advanced. I get that tinge of pride, like, oh, wow, that would be really neat. Kind of another stripe on the shoulder, so to speak, to reflect the hard work you've done. But it may happen yet, and our kids are now in school and keeping quite busy with their activities. So in the home stretch here, if it were to happen, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. It would be a great way to kind of go out, as it were. So we'll see.
I think that outcome and seeing those results don't happen for 15 to 20 years, because you've got to wait till your kids grow up, and you've got to watch and see what happens to those people who did take the promotion. I remember there was one time where I was having that conversation with my manager, and he said, be careful what you wish for. Everyone who I've promoted to manager has gotten a divorce. And so you think about that, and it's like, there was a cost to that decision, and it was pretty high, but you don't see that in 2 years or 3 years. It takes a while for those things to play out. And I don't think most people don't take the time to look that far forward to see what the possible outcomes are. And then at that point, you've either got to make decisions in the day of how you're going to handle it and make sure that everybody's on board up front.
That's right. There is a trade-off for sure. And I've seen exactly that happen with bosses that I work for, same company. Contrast that with a manager that I worked for about 10 years ago. Definitely a type A, definitely a direct and very career-oriented workaholic individual. Lost track of her for a while. She went off to different departments, and I too went off in a different area of a very large company. We finally connected a month ago after 10 years, and this individual had done a 180 on me, was not the same person. Time will change us, true, but she's in a consulting role for the company. She's not even an employee, but a sort of zen had come over her, and just a very calm presence, individual contributor. She's able to take a month off to travel with her family whenever she would pretty much like to, and can pretty much dictate the work that she does for our company as a consultant, a highly regarded consultant. So I think there's something there. And I haven't fully discounted that notion of myself in a few years' time, perhaps looking into a consulting opportunity. There's a local friend of mine, Daryl from jumptoconsulting.com, and great guy. I've met him and done coffee with him, and he's very much a proponent of that. He's like, I'm my own boss. I can work 5 hours a week. I can work 20 hours a week. Sometimes I can work 40 or 50. But I'm calling the shots, and I can fire a client if I want to. I'm financially independent, and life couldn't be better. Night and day from the office politics and agendas of others that you may or may not align with. So I still have that sort of lingering idea, right, that I may pursue yet. We'll see.
That's what, to me, financial independence is about freedom, which is what he's talking about. It's not about retiring early, although I think at one point that was higher on my list. But as I've gotten older and I guess wiser, I don't know. It's basically what I was reading and hearing is, look, you're at your prime in a sense. You've got all this wisdom. If you want to build generational wealth, why are you just stepping away and doing nothing when you have so much to offer? And that's why I think the retire early part isn't so much there for me. I'm going to continue doing things, but I'm going to be like your consultant. I'm going to work for the clients that I want to work for. I'm going to do it on my time frame and on my hours. And there'll be times where we'll sprint, which means, yeah, maybe we're working 40 hours for a 2-month period per week. But then there'll be times where, hey, you know, we're going on a 2-month vacation and we're going to go enjoy stuff, and we'll see how that all works out. But I think that is much more, for me, what I'd like to see my life with, because I do need a certain amount of obligation in my life. If I don't have anything kind of putting constraints on my time, things don't seem to work out well. It's much better when I know I have deadlines and things to do and things to achieve. It helps to keep things moving much more so.
I couldn't agree more. I've observed this in my in-laws, wonderful people who retired at 55 and over time found it a struggle to really enjoy that retirement. I think on some days it's a boredom that sets in. I've written about it as well. And I think, to your point, we all need a pattern. We all need a routine. Routine is great for children, obviously. It keeps them out of trouble. It keeps them in a better mode of behavior. I don't think it's a whole lot different for us grown-ups either. I look to that wonderful documentary film, Jiro Dreams of Sushi. Another post that I tongue-in-cheek wrote a headline, Why You Should Never Retire. But in truth, I think everyone with designs on early retirement really needs to watch that film and reevaluate why. And I think, if nothing else, Rocky, I would love it for someone to invent a new word to replace retirement, because I think retirement we should reserve for people that are done with, you know, day-to-day work, and they're ready to travel. They're ready to maybe just watch the grandkids and just relax and read, or very much a light sort of routine. They're ready for that phase of life. There's got to be a different word for us.
Have you traveled extensively? By that, I mean, have you gone somewhere for 3 weeks?
The longest has been 2 weeks we spent in France.
Okay. I've been places for 3 weeks. It turns into work.
Yeah, I believe it.
It's like, I'm tired of this. This is no longer vacation. It's time to go home. And if that were my daily life, I think I would have the same kind of thing. It's like, what do I do today? It's too much thinking, too much boredom, and not enough excitement. I mean, that's not a thrilling life to me. That becomes kind of not great. So yeah, we do have to find, no one has created that word for what is, it's essentially the freedom to work as you choose.
It's life after at-will employment.
Yeah.
When you're not under the thumb of a corporation or a company, when it's you that is running the show, maybe you've got a business or not, maybe you've just got a side gig or two, or heck, maybe you found a volunteer gig, you're financially independent, you don't need to make money from it. All sorts of different opportunities out there, but you are in control. As you said early on, it's about the freedom more than anything. But anyone that's able-bodied, I don't think wants to just sit back in a hammock all the time or go on, like you said, that 3-week vacation where after week 2 you're just like, well, geez, we've seen about every museum, we've been to every beach, what do we do now? Now I'll give you this. I would probably do okay with 4 weeks in Italy. You'd probably twist my arm to not take that trip, but I see where you're coming from. And we'll see. I know for me, a priority in these last 11 months before I leave the cubicle behind is to make sure that after that last day, on day 1 of early retirement, quote unquote, I know what my routine will be. And I have enough to fill my days, and to fill those days with things that bring me joy, not things that bring me stress, Because I can tell you there won't be a commute involved. There won't be a boss to answer to. I'll certainly be a servant leader. I'll be a servant in my home. I'll be looking after the kids. I'll be helping with, picking up the house. I'll be probably the chef de cuisine many nights because I'm the one at home. But that's different. That's okay. That's part of what you sign up for with a family. So I'm excited about it. I will tell you this. I know that there are some things that I'll miss. There's a prestige factor that comes with the gig. I mean, yeah, there's the trade-off, but also I think there's sort of this innate sense of prestige when you've been able to work your way up a corporate ladder. And there's some sense of ego to that. The relationships too. I've got friends at work, and I think it could be tougher to keep those, friendships in as good a standing when I'm not there. So yeah, there's certainly some things that could be. I think just getting in a different setting, is nice as well. I know that there were times when I'd be working from home for extended periods because either my car was in the shop or or other reasons, and you just get a little bit of cabin fever being stuck at home. So there's a few reasons why you might just miss it, but on balance, I'm more than ready to take that leap.
You can always go back. So did you make a change a few years back with your spending once you became interested in the FIRE movement?
Yes, definitely. One of the first things I did, in fact, was to create a spreadsheet of all the different things that we're doing differently as of now. And I'll tell you, and again, sort of in homage to Pete over at Mr. Money Mustache, I think half the things on that list came from free advice that he shares on his blog. Whether it was changing insurance carriers, whether it was refinancing our home at a lower rate, whether it was finding efficiencies in our electric usage or electricity usage, trading in a car for a more fuel efficient, lower maintenance vehicle, riding my bike more instead of actually using the dang car. That was revelatory as well. I really love now riding my bike to work, which I never thought I would do, before stumbling across that blog. So we went hog wild, my friend, and I will tell you that I pushed a little bit too hard because I think for a while I was testing my wife's patience. I would be asking her questions like, so you're going to drive to the grocery store? And the look I got was, the look. It's not the look you like to get. So it was stuff like that. I've since learned to ease off a little bit. I think we've been a little bit freer with, enjoying how we spend our money on little things, whether on vacation or even just taking date nights, things that get you out of the house. And the way we look at it is we're not going out and buying a new Lexus. We're not going to the mall every week to buy a new wardrobe or jewelry. We're not in the market for a 4,000 square foot craftsman house that has marble floors and fancy giant appliances. It's sort of the big stuff, avoid it, right? But the little stuff, don't sweat it so much. I think sometimes you see folks kind of harp on, oh my gosh, you went to Starbucks and got a $5 coffee. How dare you? I think we're over that, and it's okay. And it doesn't change my early retirement trajectory at this point. So I'm like, screw it. I enjoy getting that coffee. I'm going to go do it. My wife's the same, and it's cool.
Pete is extremely on the frugal side. I am not. I'm more part of what they call the fat fire crowd. I understand financial independence, but I also want to live a nice life, and I'm not going to live as he chooses to live. And that's fine, because it's funny because he started that blog and he lives on, I think, less than $30,000 a year. His blog turned into such financial success that he's now making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and he can't spend it. So I kind of feel bad for him because it's so against his message. So now he's kind of stuck. But it's okay because it's what he believes and it's what he wants. And so you have to respect that. Everyone should know and be intentional. These are my values. This is what I've decided for myself, and now I'm going to live it. Unfortunately for him, he picked too cheap a path for my liking.
Maybe he can keep up with inflation and raise his annual a little bit. And I think part of what Pete might say is, at this point in life, I've grown accustomed to what we have, and it's enough. I think for him, the word enough resonates with him right to the core. And he's also blessed with really good skills. I mean, the guy, stuff that would cost you and me thousands of dollars to do, building a new house, he could build a house. He can repair what needs to be repaired. And that's something else that I've really picked up on over the years. It's like, wow, put your hands and your brain to use. Look up how to repair that dryer on YouTube. You might just learn something. I mean, for me, with rental homes, I really have no choice if I don't want to impact our profits, but to learn how to DIY some of this stuff. And it has saved us thousands of dollars. And so I think for Pete, I can't imagine that he would enjoy going back to a 4,000 square foot house. I think they came from a bigger house. I don't think a brand new fancy car would really work for him because he likes putting those muscles to work on a bike. If nothing else, Rocky, he's probably regretting, gosh, wouldn't it be great if we could use some of that money and travel the world? And who knows, maybe at some point he'll say, you know what, we're going to pack up for a year, see the world, do it the way he wants to do it. And that could be a possibility. Fortunately for me and my blog, I don't have constraints that I've shared with my readers, like, we're going to live within these means or this. The only constraint that I've really put out there is my target for when I'm going to depart the cubicle. And I hope to keep my readers' trust and not miss that target. But beyond that, I can't imagine, Rocky, if we won the lottery, I don't know that we would need a whole lot more. It'd be nice to have a different house where the kids could each have their own bedroom, and our in-laws could have a nice guest bedroom for when they visit us from out of state. But sometimes you think about fancy things. The guest post I did today talked about that, how fun it was to zip around Switzerland in a Corvette with my buddy. At the same time, the most important thing is really people. And I've had a few different events in my life that have underscored the importance of people. And I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm still trying to figure out how to be a better friend, how to do a better job of making friends. And part of me feels like I'm probably too smug sometimes, and that's probably not an appealing thing for someone that's looking to make a friend in me. But those are things I need to work on. And those are things that are important to me. I look back over the years, and my fondest memories aren't the ones where I bought something big and fancy or did something to make my life easy. My fondest memories are the things where I was hanging out with friends, enjoying life. Maybe we were doing something challenging, like sailing a sailboat into a 80-mile-an-hour headwind on Lake Superior and got nearly capsized. Those are the things that matter. I think when you come to the end of your journey in life, are those experiences and those relationships more than anything else. And money is just sort of, it's a thing you almost need to get past. Financial independence is something you just need to achieve and get to the point where, man, money is a tool, and I just don't want to have to think about it. Be responsible, help others through charity and whatnot, but don't make it the central focus.
And I agree with you. I think it's been somewhat of a struggle. I know how to do everything, and when I was younger, I wanted to do everything. So at that point, putting a roof on a house or dropping new tile or doing the plumbing was kind of exciting and fun. As you get older, it loses some of its funness, I think, depending on what it is and what else is going on at the same time. And it's not always as enjoyable anymore. And
I found out the hard way, man. I got like a really bad case of bursitis in my right knee after we painted a few rooms a year ago. And I'm like, well, painting sure isn't as fun as it used to be.
No, we go back and forth on this. I've learned now to pay people to do certain things, and I do certain things, and we kind of go back and forth. But at the end of the day, I guess the key is that the work gets done. So if you have the time, put the effort into it and do it and save the money. If you don't have the time, then don't let it just keep going. Just finally pay somebody, call it a day, and move on. And everyone's got to decide for themselves. Of course, don't go into debt If you don't have time and you don't have money, now you're screwed. So figure out at least a way to get one of those two things, because otherwise, I think it's the bigger issue. When you don't have either, it becomes a big problem.
Agree. Well put.
So I know you have used rental real estate as part of your path to financial independence. I also have some rentals and we flip houses, but I've kind of taken a slightly different attitude, it sounds like, than you. And my attitude was, I'm going to do everything I can not to touch these properties. So I will kind of more manage them, or I will do the big picture, and I will be the general manager, but I don't want to be lifting hammers and doing the plumbing. And that was a time issue. Plus, we've built a pretty good team of people who do things, and because they're always doing them, they can do them faster, quicker, and easier than I can at this point in time. So how has what's been your involvement in real estate, and how's that working out for you?
Sure. Yeah, and I'd be lying if I didn't say that I wanted to at some point bring in property management on ours. Life will take its turns. I'm quite sure of that. But we started out in real estate back in late 2012, and fortuitous. I have a good friend at work who started out himself buying up duplexes and a quadplex right after the implosion of 2008. So he was getting some pretty good rock bottom deals. It's like, man, you got to get in on this. There's some foreclosures out there, the short sales, the borrowing rate is super low. What are you waiting for? So we got in. We first house, I was very nervous. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're actually doing this. That I'm going to be a landlord. Holy smokes. And it was tough. It was tough. I got to say, I mean, nothing like closing on a house the very last week of December in Minnesota, and then getting in there in January to clean it up, make some improvements, list it, and try to find a tenant. The showings in the evening aren't going to be that wonderful when you've got paintbrushes, you've got all sorts of tools, equipment, things are taken apart. Oh yeah, and by the way, it's pitch black outside. It just doesn't make the house look very appealing. So we struggled. It took us, I think it wasn't until late February, that we found a tenant. And I'm like, oh my gosh, thank goodness. But that took longer than I thought, practically 2 months of vacancy. But not having learned my lesson well enough, we bought another one about 6 months later, thinking, well, we better strike while the iron's hot. The market's still, low, but recovering. So we picked up rental 2. And once again, you could find me tiling up a shower while my kids were still, in the hospital after my wife had given birth to them. Now, granted, I was there 95% of the time, but I had to squeeze away, time to get that second house ready for tenants. So great timing there, Cubert. The good news story of it is that we subsequently added 2 more over the next successive couple of years. So we have 4 local single-family homes, and not a single month of vacancy, knock on wood, in 5 years, and no evictions, knock on wood. So I'm a big fan of single-family houses. I'm also a big fan of good tenant screening, right? So I check credit scores, we do background checks. We want to make sure that, I'm not bringing in somebody that has a history of evictions or, violent felons, things like that. And good credit score, being credit worthy, being able to pay the rent is important. So, it's not always roses, but, it's worked. And then just this last year, this is the first sort of year of the Airbnb being online. Last year, we bought the property, the condo, in October, and got it ready to go for short-term rentals in February of this year, and that's worked out pretty well also. I mean, granted, it's been more work, I think, than I anticipated. I mean, you've got to be ready to respond to your guests. Help them get checked in, help them get checked out. If they have questions, your cleaning crew might need something. You got to think about keeping the place stocked. So it's definitely not a passive endeavor, but we didn't want to pass up the opportunity. And I felt it would be just an interesting thing to take on, frankly. So here we are. So that's the story of our portfolio, kind of in a nutshell.
And I've thought about the Airbnb. We live in an area where I could probably do it well. But then I have looked, and I'm one of those people who looks at everything and sees all of the risks and the issues. And as I looked at an Airbnb, I'm like, I don't have the time to manage turnovers, because you're going to have turnovers every week, essentially. And I'm like, well, I don't want to deal with the cleaning crew because I know what they're like. I mean, we flip houses. We know how the worker's supposed to come on Monday and they don't come till Wednesday. That's all well and good, except when you've got somebody leaving Monday morning and someone coming in Monday evening. There's no flexibility in that. You've got to have the place cleaned, and if you're dealing with sheets and all that kind of stuff. I just looked at managing all of that and said, I don't have the bandwidth to do it. And I said, I'm out. I'm not doing that. I know there are people who do it and do it well, and I applaud them. But again, you have to look at yourself and say, does it work for us, and does it work where I live? And if it does, and you're okay with it, that's great. For me, I was kind of out.
Well, that's just it. And I think you hit on probably the biggest X factor, the cleaning crew. I hadn't really put a ton of thought into that. I just said, there's enough other Airbnbs, VRBOs there. We actually stayed at a VRBO the year before and had a really good experience. And I'm like, I better talk to this guy. So I actually called the owner months later when we were thinking about this condo, and I said, hey, I frankly, I just need to interview you about this. And what's the experience been like? And tell me about your cleaning crew. How did you manage that? Very honest with me. Gave me the confidence that, hey, in this area, there are a lot of folks that are looking for cleaning gigs. They're reliable, dependable, and you should be able to make it work. I think it depends on where and what the local economy is, what it will support in terms of, how reliable of a crew maybe you can get in there. And I've been quite fortunate so far, again, knock on wood, to have a pretty reliable cleaning crew. A wonderful lady. And there's software now that helps you with this. We actually use a free app called Turnover B&B, which my cleaner installs on her phone. And so anytime a reservation is booked through either Airbnb or VRBO, it'll automatically update the calendar on Turnover B&B. So she's alerted, oh, I've got another turnover that I'm going to have to do on this date. And then your cleaner accepts it. When they accept it, you get the email notification, so they're aware. So thank goodness for software. I got to tell you, if it weren't for that, some of the other tools like Beyond Pricing to help me with market supply demand and pricing, which is definitely one of those trickier features and aspects, this would be a pretty high pretty tall mountain to climb. Besides the fact that there's technology now that helps me manage the house from afar. We've got a keypad entry that I can program a different code sitting in my basement in Minneapolis for a condo that's 600 miles away in Michigan for each new guest. And I can set and check the thermostat that's connected because it's a Nest thermostat connected on the internet. So all this stuff I can manage from my handy dandy smartphone. Without all that, Rocky, I think it'd be tough. You would have to have a local property manager, basically, that you have to trust to manage it.
And I guess part of my experience is we vacation down in the Outer Banks a lot. When we vacation down there, we always rent a house, and we rent it for the week. And I sit out there, and I just watch the repairman coming and going. There's the AC guy at that house. There's the pool guy at that house. There's this guy at that house. And all I see is money going out the door.
Right.
And it's funny because there was actually just a post the other day on Choose FI where someone was talking about real estate and rental real estate. And he said, by the time you add up all the costs and actually put them on the spreadsheet and look at your time and all your time invested, you're not making any money. And that was kind of his premise. And I think in certain situations and in probably for a lot of people, that very well may be true, that by the time you put all the dollars and cents together and you do this, it's not making as much as you think it's making. And that's just the reality of it. I know most landlords are like, yeah, they look at their tax returns where they're thankful that it's a loss because of depreciation, but they're not looking at all the little line items buried in there for repairs and this and that drives that as well.
That's a good point. We can sometimes be blinded by the wizardry of our accountants and the tax code for real estate. And I will say this, the tax code for real estate is pretty darn good. And if you can find a cash flowing property that's passive, why not, go for it. But you're right. When it comes to a vacation rental property, I think our current Airbnb experiment, I'm clocking it at a 10% return this year. I could easily chalk up that 10% to all the time and effort that I've put into that place. And I still would feel vastly underpaid. I went out there for 2 long weekends to get the place set up and just about killed myself. My dad helped me out the first time with putting the floors in. It was a lot of hard work. Good for me. I enjoy it. I mean, I enjoy working on houses. If I didn't, it would just be absolutely horrible. Or the cost of having somebody else do it for me would make it a bad investment. So, you got to love it. You got to love the craft of building or improving homes, or it's not for you. You have to enjoy customer service and, offering people a good product, or it's not for you. If the customer is always wrong, don't even think about it. You know what I mean? So, yeah, you have to have a little bit of those things in your DNA.
And that's very true. So as we talk about costs, as you're going to take an early retirement, one of the things that seems to be a major concern, and I don't think anyone's found a good answer, what are you going to do for healthcare costs?
Great question. Here's how far we are there, and I think we're about 50% down the road to an answer. We're going to rely first on the exchange, MNsure, here in Minnesota. We will pay for those policies through my wife's business practice so that she'll be able to make our healthcare a business deduction. It will be a low, or rather a high deductible plan, because we're fitness freaks. I mean, my wife is. I should say she is. I'm definitely a step below her in that regard. I definitely do what I can with biking to work and occasionally throwing some kettlebells around, but and going for runs, whatever. But we try to be in good shape and eat well. Try to avoid medical situations, quote unquote. That said, it's insurance because you never know what could come up. But we'll get a high deductible plan, and with that, we want an HSA. I'm a big fan of the health savings account. It's actually a product I'm very familiar with. I, supported software around it at my job for many years, 10 years ago. So I'm quite intimate with it. Thanks to the mad scientist, it's clear what a powerful, retirement vehicle it is, for those later years. But we'll be able to deduct all of the contributions to that as well. So at the very least, our business, my wife's business, will be a huge factor in obviating some of the cost through, channeling it through our business. We just have to hope a little bit right now, and I don't want to rely on that, but hope that the exchange stays viable, and that, industrious early retirees like myself can make that leap, open up a spot for the next aspiring corporate worker, and then I can go out and be industrious and add to the economy in the way I know best. Whether it's through supporting nonprofits like Habitat for Humanity, whether it's through setting up my own property management business with our rentals, coaching, like life, personal finance coaching. There's all sorts of things that are on my list right now to explore. So that's where we're at. I will be honest with you, Rocky. I think there's probably more research I could do. The good thing is that some pioneers that have gone before me, like Fritz at the Retirement Manifesto, Tanya at Our Next Life, have written pretty extensively on the topic, and there's such good resources out there for FRE, free. You just have to know where to find them. So we'll see.
That is very true.
That is definitely our bogey right now.
You've said you're a student of life. What are some of the things that you've learned, and especially those things that you've learned that people probably don't know or should know?
Well, I think starting with the childhood piece I mentioned, childhood divorce, I've certainly learned about how relationships can unfold, sometimes for the worse. And I appreciate my parents for doing what they did, because they definitely needed to do what they did to be happy. And it just wasn't a good situation for them. As a kid, you absorb that. I think they would appreciate the fact that I'm making a better effort or doing things a little bit differently based on their example, which I think is their intent, to make sure that my relationship with my wife is strong, with my kids is strong. I think that's been helpful for me. I cherish my kids and my family. And I have to kind of remind myself when I fall into patterns where sort of kind of doing my own thing and I just need to be a little bit more engaged with my little kids, or be more planful and planning date nights, things like that. That's important. I think another example was in college. One of the dumbest things I've ever done, but also one of the most illuminating things. It's funny how college is usually the setting for those. One summer, I signed up to be on the paint crew there. I was early in college, and it was like after my sophomore year, and I was like, oh, okay, well, let's make some money. I'll work on the paint crew. We go around painting up dorm rooms all day long. But I said, you know what, just to keep things easy, I'll just stay in the dorm room. Then I won't have to go out and find an apartment, which is what you typically would do. And that was a really dumb decision because the dorm practically empties out. I think there were like 2 other people, if that, and it got really lonely. So it was a tough summer. I remember a mouse had crept into the room at night and was getting into my food, and I'm just like, oh my God, this is terrible. Now I can't sleep because I have a mouse or mice in the room. And so it taught me a valuable lesson that the math for the money and the sacrifice you're making here to be on the paint crew, good, keep doing it, but people, it's all about people. So what I learned after that is, man, just the importance of being around people can't be undersold. And I think I've definitely used that as sort of a turning point in my life to make sure that people are the forefront, because it's awfully lonely out there, whether or not you're stuck in the dorm room in a big 1940s, almost military size type dormitory at Michigan State, or even if you're out in the world, or maybe you're surrounded by people, but you feel terribly lonely. Life is too short, and those relationships are what really matters. And I've certainly read enough books. I think one of the current books I'm reading, The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F-U-C-K, is very helpful as well. I mean, it sort of has been a really good read for me to sort of remind me of, hey, what's important? What should you really be caring about? And what are some of the things that you really shouldn't be spending so much time and energy on? For example, the nightly news. So just a combination of just through relationships, through reading, I think, Rocky, I think through even meeting people like yourself and having really good discussions can elicit some of the why behind what we do and really distill down what's important.
And relationships are a major backbone as part of Richer Soul. It's one of the things we talk about. It's something that you have to work on, be intentional with, and it's also being careful in who you surround yourself with, because you are the average of the people around you. So making sure you make wise and good choices with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So do you have an action step that you could share with the audience that they could take this week to make a small step to improving their life?
I do. And I don't want to sound cliche by any means, so I'm going to try to phrase it as best I can. Really, it truly is, everything that happens in your life is a reflection of your attitude. If you choose to believe that you're a victim, you won't get very far. There may be some very real reasons why some things happen, and they're external to you. That's fine, that's fair. But as long as you have the ability to take action, you should take it. No one sort of forced me into real estate. No one forced me into grad school when I had an opportunity to go to grad school after I got laid off for 12 years ago from my last 2 companies ago. There's a lot of different things in life. There's a lot of different paths you can take, but be accountable and don't fall victim to the victim mentality, because I think if I've observed anything from people in my life, those that play the victim and take that victim card tend to find the road a little bit more of a struggle. Those who take ownership and kind of forge their own path tend to find success. They tend to find contentment and appreciate life and tend to avoid regrets. That's probably the action step that I can give you there, because it's not just about money, clearly. The money can happen, and the money will happen if you apply yourself and put relationships first.
Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you choose to react to it. And that's a choice we all have.
Absolutely.
We can play victim, or we can just own it and say, hey, this is what I've been dealt. What can I do to make it better? And what can I learn from this experience? And how is it going to make me stronger? And that's an excellent action step for the week. And it's an attitude and a mindset that we need to own and control.
Definitely.
So if people would like to find you, read some of your articles, learn more about you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Absolutely, Rocky. Thanks for that opportunity. So I can be found at www.abandonedcubicle.com. And once you get to that website, there's ways you can find me on social media. I've got a presence on Twitter, CubertAC, and I'm also on Facebook. And I can be reached at cubertac@gmail.com. And I hope if you make it out to abandonedcubicle.com, take a walk through some of those posts. They range from in-depth, informative, technical stuff, but there's also quite a bit of tongue-in-cheek satire. If nothing else, I try to write from a perspective of, hey, I'm going to have something entertaining to share with you, and it's going to be informative at the same time. So, check it out. Would love to have new readers. I especially love it when they share a little bit of feedback in the comments.
And I've read a bunch of your articles, and I encourage other people to go out there and take a look at some of your wisdom. Of course, leave feedback. We all love feedback.
Right on.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I think we had a wonderful discussion, and hopefully you've inspired some people to take a step forward on their path to financial independence.
I hope so. Thanks for having me, Rocky.
The choice to retire, and by that I mean not having to work for money and doing what you love, is possible. You have to be intentional and keep your costs down and your savings up. Cubert is close to walking away. Isn't that awesome? Cubert can be found on Twitter and Facebook at CubertAC. This week's action step: don't fall victim to what life throws at you. Take action. Isn't that what we talked about during the intro? When it comes to early retirement, we need a plan for what we're going to do. Having a retirement without purpose is a fast track to an early death. I don't mean you need to work, but having activities that you love. Maybe it's volunteering, art, travel, having a blog, or consulting. The choices are vast, and we should love what we do. In order to enjoy this, we also need what we talked about before the interview, and that's our health. What good is retirement if you can't enjoy it? If you're still listening, you must have liked the episode, so please share it with a few friends. I would appreciate that. What's preventing you from moving forward, and who are you putting on your team to help you build the life you deserve? Taking no action creates a far worse outcome in life than trying something and failing. As we learned today, the choices we make may have ramifications that we may not see for 10 or 20 years. Make sure you are intentional in those choices and have people around you who can help you see the elephant in the room. Can I help you achieve your goals? Just email me and we can start with a short chat to see if we're a good fit. For many people, one session allows them to take a giant leap forward and prevent mistakes that take a lot of struggle to overcome. You can reach me at rocky@richersoul.com. I'd love to hear how you're doing and how the information I've shared has helped. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.